Hi, hello, and welcome. I'm so excited to be here with you today. We are going to talk about really our motivation and setting our goals around our writing and going out and achieving them. And there are so many different elements to that. So tonight we're going to break that down. Again, so glad that you're here. And as we kind of dive in, I'd love for you just to comment below where you're joining from. I know we've have quite the global community of people coming together to talk about our goals and our motivations. So feel free to share below in the comments where you are joining from. I am Charlotte. I am the founder of Her Narrative. I am also a certified developmental editor and a certified life coach. And I work with authors around the world to really bring their stories forward in a way that's very intentional. And also, writing is just one element of our entire lives. And it is the way that a lot of us choose to express ourselves and express our creativity. And so I work with people in how do you incorporate that writing into your life? So often our lives are so busy and so full, and so writing can fall off to the bottom of our to-do list, and being able to make sure that we're engaged in this form of creativity can be so powerful for ourselves. And so if you have a passion for writing, if you feel like you have a calling or purpose within your writing, then you are absolutely in the right place today. So thank you for being here. Really excited about today. And again, thank you for commenting where you're watching and tuning in from. And so to kind of help us set the stage for today, I would invite you to think about, on a scale of 1 to 10, how strong is your feeling of motivation? So 1 being like, oh, there's not really much motivation here, and 10 being like, I am so motivated, let's go, I'm ready. Just go ahead and make note of that somewhere. We will come back to this at the end of the presentation. And if you are feeling like you're at a 10 or a 10 plus with your motivation, I have a second question for you in, again, ranking from that 1 to 10 scale. If you're thinking about that motivation and if any self-doubt might be coming up in that process, maybe rank how strong that self-doubt feels from a 1 to 10. So 1 being like, oh, I guess 1 would be there's a lot of self-doubt, right? Tons of self-doubt, where 10 is like, it's there, but it's not overwhelming. So maybe make note of that as well. Okay, so what are we going to cover in today's session? So what we're going to cover today, and my hope really is to help you learn practical approaches to goal setting, challenge some limiting beliefs that may come up, and also have a very solid writing practice to help you achieve your goals. So we're going to look a little bit at what are your goals, what might be getting in the way, and then how are you going to achieve those goals. So we're going to do that by looking at what are your writing goals. We're going to then get to the source of that motivation, so make sure we're clear on our why behind what we're doing. We're going to explore the unconscious mind a little bit because, believe it or not, it plays a huge role in us being able to accomplish our goals. And then we're going to talk about working with some of maybe our limiting beliefs that are coming up, or fear, or that self-doubt that I mentioned. There are different ways that we can start to move through and work with these emotions as they come up. I know sometimes with self-doubt or thinking we're not good enough and the fear, like those are an unfortunate or maybe fortunate part of the creative process. So it is something that we cannot embark on a big project like writing a novel or a short story without those coming up at some point in time. And so the good news is that we can work with those emotions, we can lean into them and allow them to still guide us forward without kind of pushing them away or stuffing them away. There really is an opportunity to learn from them as we continue to work towards our goals. We just don't want them derailing us completely. So I've got you. If you're feeling like that, you're here. This is what we're going to cover. And then we are going to also dive into a little bit of our writing practice and kind of help define how we're going to move forward to our goals once we've looked at everything above. And some of our time management, I know, can be so valuable. It really is. Time is our most precious resource. And then, of course, I have a special invite for you at the very end, and you stay for that. So let's get started. First things first, though, is I definitely want to make sure that we kind of ground into this space. It's really important that you took the time to show up here today and let's do it distraction free so you can really get the most out of this. So just take like 2 minutes. You can pause this video, come back to it. Make sure you have the tools that you need. We are going to be journaling and responding to a few questions, a little bit of self-reflection in this process. So please make sure that you have a notebook and pen, or if you prefer to take digital notes, then you have a new document or notes open that's available for you to do that. And, go ahead and clear your space. If you feel like work's piled up or all your to-dos are around you, feel free to kind of clear some of those. Maybe put your phone on silent, and just kind of allow your body and mind to sink into the space so that we can be fully present. And so maybe just kind of shrugging your shoulders up and exhaling, letting those go. Our bodies can hold on to so much as we're moving through the day. So you just wiggle a little bit, get situated in your seat, take a couple deep breaths. And as you're doing that, if your mind starts to kind of race and you're thinking about what you're going to make for dinner later or to-dos or anything that you need to do, feel free just to jot those down and let them know that you will come back to them as soon as you're finished here with this activity. Great. Well, a little bit more about me. I know I did a brief intro at the top, but I am Charlotte, and I'm really on a mission to help fiction writers engage in their truest sense of creativity and really bringing that creative potential forward with greater ease and less self-doubt. This is such a big part of kind of my mission. I really believe that we need more women telling their stories, that our stories have such impact on the people who are reading them. And the more that we can share in our stories, the more I think that we can make the world a better place. That might sound like a huge mission, but I really do believe when our voices and our stories are shared, there's so much to learn. And I think there's such good conversations that can have from that, and we can truly impact other people's lives. And so for me, this is such a huge mission. And on a more individual level, it really is about us being able to express our own creative outlets, creating, again, impact through story and being able to connect with one another in our stories, if it be from the reader or the author to the reader, or if it be author to author. I think there's so much value in us sharing our stories. And so I really like to hold the space like I'm doing here today to allow each of us to connect and tap into that creativity and do it with greater ease. So less of that wrestling with our self-doubt, less of wrestling with the fear, and being able to really move forward to accomplish our goals so that our passion and our purpose of writing our story comes to fruition. I really believe that the world needs your story, and this is absolutely where you start. So again, thank you so much for being here. And so a little bit more about my background and why stories, why writing. It is something that I have been very pulled to since a child. And this is actually my little red binder that I still have. When a lot of kids were out playing soccer, I was writing stories, and all of them live in this binder. And I just have always gravitated towards writing, illustrating. You can see some ribbon hanging out of the bottom of the binder, and that's actually a story that I self-published, if you will, with a cardboard cover and that ribbon binding. And I made 2 copies, one of which went to my preschool, and they used to read it to the kids. I was a little bit older, maybe like 8 or 9 years old when I wrote that book. And it is a children's story. And I don't know, there's something about storytelling. I've always loved being able to kind of put on your imagination and just dive into these different worlds and the different lessons and explore life and explore how people respond to life is so fascinating to me. And so, again, I really think stories are such a connection point, and there's so much that we can learn, even just to like escape our own lives. Like sometimes we also read just to be like, oh, I want to go into a different world. And so this is why I think stories are just so impactful. Like there's so much that we can learn. There's so much that we can gain. We're either being entertained or we're learning something. And I think this is just such a powerful point. And so It is something that has then carried through my entire life and my career. I went into marketing for almost 12 years, where I was very captivated by the stories of the brands that I worked for and with. And so I have created a lot of brand stories and a lot of content marketing and strategy. And so that is kind of like professionally how that evolved. And then more recently started Her Narrative, which is really where I've been diving into the coaching and developmental editing with authors, because it was time to get back to the stories. I am also working on a novel right now too, so I am in the hot seat just as much as I am helping those of you who are also here and writing stories as well. And so I do want to share a little bit more about this kind of maybe this level of frustration, and how we can use that to really move towards a more powerful fulfillment state. So this is Sarah. She was an aspiring author who just had this burning passion for storytelling, which is very much so relatable for myself. And so for years, she toiled with the labyrinth of uncertainty, and I think faced a lot of struggles that are very common to authors, and that self-doubt, that lack of direction, the ever elusive clarity on like, what is my next step? Like, how do I get started? Once I'm started, what do I do next? So I think a lot of us are very familiar with Sarah's story. And so, Sarah's journey, just like each of ours, had various stages to it. And so the blank page was something that was sort of like, oh, this is, like, what if the words I put down aren't perfect? Or what if, my outline isn't perfect and I write away from the outline? There was a lot of different questions that were coming up for Sarah. And so she ended up kind of in this place of indecision of just like, I don't even know which direction to go, so therefore I'm going to go nowhere. And so, again, she was confused about what genre she needed to be fitting herself into, or the themes or the core message of her work. And then she was even getting ahead of herself and thinking about the publishing world, and it was so confusing. How do you write for the publishing? And again, there was so much uncertainty in that whole creative process. So Sarah's journey, she really was just in this place of frustration. And so she reached out to me because she decided it was a time for change. And so I've worked with her one-on-one through coaching, and we did quite a few introspective exercises before we got into some goal setting and some strategic planning around how to take her idea and map it out to be the novel she wanted it to be. And this is a little bit of what we're going to tap into here today, too, when I talk about the exercises. And so as she went through this process, she was able to then begin to really unearth the true essence of her writing and her ambitions and what it was that she wanted to accomplish. And so as she was gaining this clarity, she was able to like pin down her preferred genre and identify who her target readers were and have a concrete plan for how she was going to move forward and achieve her writing goals. And so with this clarity, she was able to really kind of tap back into that creativity and had that kind of clarity of mind that was really helping her create the space to be creative and make the best work possible that she wanted to put out into the world. And so I want this for you too. I know this journey of writing is not an easy one, and it's, it zigzags and it swirls and it twirls. But Sarah's story is very much so a testament of the transformative power of clarity. And so when we can really understand like what we want to achieve, we can position ourselves for that success. And so clarity really became Sarah's compass, and it can become yours as well. And so, when we kind of move through the challenge or work with the challenges that are coming up, we really have the opportunity to then open the door and step through into something new and exciting. And so clarity begins with intention. So you might be thinking, okay, great. Well, how do I gain that clarity? Well, we're going to move into that intentionally here today. And it really does start with defining what your writing goals are. And so in the notebook or the space that you brought with you today, let's just take a couple minutes to think about what are your writing goals. And again, you can pause this video and take as much time as you need. But really think about kind of what are your immediate and long-term goals. You can position this as short-term, maybe in the next 90 days or in the next like 2 years. If you have goals, for example, to become published, that might not necessarily have a timeline on it, and that's okay. If you want to be traditionally published or self-published, whatever the goals are, go ahead and just kind of write that down, what that looks like. And as you've written your goals, I also want you to think about how can you celebrate showing up? So this doesn't necessarily mean like how are you going to celebrate when you get the publishing deal or when you get published your short story to a website. This is more about how can you celebrate showing up every day, every week. Maybe it's buying flowers every week because you sat down and had 3 different writing sessions that week. Maybe it's going out for a fancy coffee and writing in a coffee shop once a week or twice a week. Those are different ways that we can like show up for ourselves and celebrate the progress along the way. So as you're thinking about your goals and writing those down, please also write how you're going to celebrate along the way. Again, if you need to pause this video for more time, please go ahead and do that. But we are going to move on to the getting to the source of motivation. So now that we have your goals defined, we're going to look at a little bit more of the why and why we are motivated to reach these writing goals. So in America, there's more than half the population has a desire to write a novel, but only 8% actually complete the written manuscript. And only 6% of it make it halfway, and they attribute that to the lack of inspiration for finishing, to lack of time as a resource is the main one for not completing the project. And this is the same if you think about like New Year's resolutions. There's a lot that can happen within this like first like 3 or 4 weeks of January is usually when people stop their New Year's resolutions because change is hard. And I would say that not only is change hard, but when you're going after a creative endeavor like writing a novel, it is increasingly difficult. This is not something that many people set out to do. And again, half the population in America would like to write a novel, but only 8% complete a written manuscript. We're not even talking about publishing. We're talking about completing a manuscript. So I want to honor and acknowledge you for showing up and being willing to write a book. This is an incredibly hard thing to do. And it does get easier, and we are doing something fun and creative, but there's a lot of challenges. And so I just want to, again, honor you for being willing and having the courage to show up and to do this thing, because it ain't easy. And so when we are met with a challenging task, like writing a novel, it can be very difficult to keep our motivation. So it might be taking you years to write a novel. It might be taking months. Having consistent motivation to continue to show up for that long extended period of time, again, takes a lot of courage. And it's not always just about willpowering our way through it. It is about kind of setting that intention and being able to pace over that long period of time. And so when we're met with a difficult task, there can be many reasons for why the motivation maybe ebbs and flows. And so lack of time is definitely a very real one. Yes, we all have the same amount of hours in the day, but we also have very different life experiences and different responsibilities within the day. And so time is very, very much so a resource. Lack of inspiration, I can tell you there are days where I'm like, I would rather go to the gym than sit down and write. That can be very real. The lack of inspiration, we're not always flying high and feeling so motivated about our goals and our writing. Excuse me. Limiting beliefs is a big one, which we're going to dive into here a little bit later. But limiting beliefs, if you believe that your writing's not good enough or you're never going to be good enough to be a published author, those are incredibly powerful and something I see with most of my clients. You're not alone if you've ever thought that or felt that. And then, of course, not having clear why on what you're doing. So when we're doing really hard things, we need to be able to understand why we're doing what we're doing, because that is the key to what's going to keep us motivated and moving forward. And so let's go ahead and get clear on our motivations right now. So this is going to be a little bit of a writing exercise. So go ahead and grab your pen. and wherever you're writing notes for today. And I want you to think again on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to achieve these goals? So I know you kind of wrote that at the top, so I'm curious if anything has changed since we looked at that, especially now that you've written down your goals. So again, 10 is like highly motivated, ready to go, very excited. And so taking that number again, if it's not at a 10, which is very okay, very realistic if it's not, I would be curious, like, what's in the way of it being a 10? And then also, what needs to happen to get it to be a 10? So this could be, again, maybe it's actually scheduling those writing sessions into your calendar and sticking to them. It could be, again, maybe it is hiring a writing coach to keep you accountable into your writing schedule so that you're not falling behind. Because when we're not published, like most of us aren't, it can be really hard. Like we don't have set deadlines. We don't have to get a book back to an editor, or we don't have a publishing date, which means, there's certain milestones along that path. So accountability is such a huge thing that I see with so many of my clients and something I work with them on directly. So again, if you need an accountability partner or a book coach or a friend that you're going to call every week to tell them how many words you wrote, there's so many different ways that we can think about keeping ourselves accountable. So again, that may be the case for you here if that's what you need for that motivation to be a 10. But again, take a moment just to answer these questions. You can also pause the video again. So the next question is, what is your motivation for achieving this goal? So what really excites you about this goal? It's another way of framing that question. So go ahead and just take a moment there. And I will say, if at any point you feel like sharing any of the answers to these questions in the comments, please do so. I will be responding to all of the comments, but again, this is also personal to you, so you can just keep this in your safe, quiet notes that you're taking. So the third question is, what are the benefits of achieving this goal? I feel like this is a big one. Could be, sensing that feeling of accomplishment. It could be maybe there's the financial benefits. That could be a part of it. There's so many benefits. I'm not going to name them all for you because I want you to elicit that answer for yourself. But what are the benefits of achieving this goal? And the fourth question is, how will your life be positively impacted when you achieve this goal? So what good things are going to come when you achieve this goal? And how are you going to feel when you achieve this goal? Again, feel free to pause the video at any point in time. And the fifth question is, what will you miss out on if you don't achieve this goal? This is one of my favorite questions to ask. It's a little bit of like, it kind of twists your brain a little bit, but what will you miss out on if you don't achieve this goal? If you're feeling really stuck with this one, that's okay. I know for me, in my own writing process, I have learned so much about the craft of fiction. When I first started to write a novel, I had no idea, no idea even how to like outline a book. And so it's been very, very educational as I've done a lot of studying, both like formal and self-study around the craft of fiction. And as I've learned so much, like it's so fun. Like I just get so excited, kind of nerding out on different things around like character arcs or point of view. I think it's just so interesting. And so those are things that I would have missed out on if I had just sat down, wrote a book, and was like, okay, great. I would have really missed out on learning and integrating the craft of the fiction, which I think is so powerful. And I feel like there's you can never stop learning. And so being able to have those opportunities to learn and to push myself to then implement a lot of what I'm learning as a writer, I mean, that's huge. That's huge growth for me. So that's something I for sure would have missed out on if I just sat down and wrote a book. So again, the fifth question is, what will you miss out on if you don't achieve this goal? The sixth question is, what will you regret if you don't achieve this goal? Like, this is a huge question. And so another way of maybe framing that is, how will you feel if you don't achieve this goal? I know for me, I will 100% have a deathbed regret if I don't write a book. It's like the one thing I want to do. Yes, I want to travel and see as many places as possible. And I want the big love. I want the the financial things in life. Like, there's so many things that I want in life, but I also know that like, if I don't write a book, that's gonna be the one thing on my deathbed that I'm gonna be like, damn it, I was writing the book. And not just one book, if I'm being honest. It's probably like, I think I have 5 or 6 solid ideas that want to come forward, and characters that are like, hey, I'm over here, come develop me. I have this story to tell. So I'm going to let you answer this question now, but I know for me, it would be a big lifelong regret if this does not happen. So what will you regret if you don't achieve this goal? So the seventh question is, how would you like to remind yourself of your motivations behind this goal? So the previous 6 questions was very much so on extracting kind of the why and the purpose behind our goals. So now it's thinking about, okay, there's a little bit more clarity around why we're doing what we're doing. And so now, how do you want to remind yourself of why you have these writing goals, why you're moving towards them? And this could be something that, maybe you put a Post-it on your writing desk, on your computer, or your mirror, or your refrigerator door. There's definitely different places that we can, have inspiration boards. I know I'm a big Post-it person, lots of pink Post-its on my desk at all times. So take a moment to think about, how do you want to remind yourself of the why behind your goals. So great work on this. I know that was like a lot of questions, a lot of thinking, a lot of self-reflection. So I hope that you have been able to come to a great way of how you're going to remind yourself of this. And I please invite you to either pause this video and go write that Post-it now, go put it on the mirror now, on the refrigerator, wherever that feels right for you. I invite you to go do that now so that it's implemented and it's not something you're going to write down and be like, oh, I'll do it later. Like, that's what the pause button is for, the power of the pause. So great work. Again, I know we don't often take a lot of time to sit down and do a lot of self-reflection and journaling every day. So I applaud you and honor you for being here and sticking through this. So thank you. So I do want to talk a little bit about the unconscious mind, because now we've set our goals. We understand why we have those goals and why they're so important to us. And so this is when things can get a little tough. This is where some of those challenges might start to pop up. We're feeling really motivated. We're jazzed, goals, yay. And then there's life roadblocks. There's some mental roadblocks. Again, that self-doubt, that fear might start to creep in. And so when it comes to our own personal stories, there's often a lot of stories that are running in the background. And this is our unconscious minds. We're not necessarily always conscious of feeling not enough, or my gosh, my brain just blanked on on limiting beliefs. But yes, a lot around like, I'm not enough, I don't believe it's possible for me, different negative self-talk that can come up. And a lot of the times that is not fully conscious in our thoughts and our emotions. And for writers, like, we can very much so get stuck in our fears and let that self-doubt then creep in. And so when we can understand the unconscious mind a little bit more, we're really able to tap into our greatest potential. And so beliefs about ourselves and the world around us are really kind of drive how we behave and respond to the world around us. So if we truly believe that we're not enough, the world is going to reflect that, and we're going to feel like we're never getting the opportunities, we're not moving forward, nobody ever likes my writing. Like, there's going to be so much of that narrative that's floating around, both conscious and unconscious. And so our unconscious is really running on these older programs that we haven't updated, and it can really limit our success as a writer. And so this is why mindset really matters for authors. I think it's a lesser spoken about topic within the industry and publishing. Again, we're setting out to do something that very few people accomplish. And so with challenging things, comes the resistance as well. So it's not always about just having a resilient mindset, but it is being mindful of our mindset and how we can move forward and create a space that's very positive for us to create our highest potential, but also like create the story that's going to be the most impactful for the world. And so when we are diving into our mindset pieces, we're really able to empower us to navigate rejections and setbacks and self-doubt, and turning these obstacles into stepping stones towards success instead of detours into, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to finish. And so a strong mindset really cultivates that confidence in our writing abilities, and it becomes the cornerstone for our own voice and our courage to take on the creative risks. And so for authors, when we cultivate that strong mindset, it's not just about navigating the challenges, it's the key to unlocking our creativity and building the confidence and establishing meaningful connections with readers. And so it's ultimately how we unlock our full potential. And so I also want to share a story about Julia. Julia was a client whose writing journey was shaped by that persistent belief of she is not enough and her writing will never be enough. Raise your hand if you've ever thought that. It has happened to me too, yes. And so this sentiment very much so cast a shadow over Julia's creative process, and she was just left with so much self-doubt and just this fear of being inadequate. And so she embarked on a transformational exploration to dismantle this belief, which had been really holding her back, and really became an empowered author as a result of leaning into this limiting belief. And so what I want to talk about is, what are beliefs? So beliefs are thoughts and statements that we perceive as reality, whether they are true or not. And so beliefs come from our experiences or the feedback that we're getting in our environment. So these can come on board very, very young, when we're very young, like under 5. And we are interpreting a lot of the world around us when we're a kid trying to figure out the world, right? So there's lots of messaging coming from our teachers, from our parents, from society, from religious leaders, from media. There's so much input that's coming into our little brains when we're young. And a lot of that is just getting organized based on the experiences and context, and our full reasoning brain hasn't fully developed yet. So it's not always compartmentalized in the most ideal way, if that's how I'm going to put it. And so what's so interesting about this is that our thoughts are so powerful. And so you may have heard, like, our thoughts create our reality. So much so of that, those thoughts can be unconscious. And so we don't even realize like how much they are impacting us and creating our reality. And so something happens to us and we essentially make up this belief to help it make sense of why it happened. And so this is kind of just more the neuroscience of it, which I like to nerd out on as well. But this is also why change is so hard, is because our brains weren't fully developed. We had this experience, and so we made this association with that experience. And so that is sort of a patterning and a belief that has unconsciously been running in our entire system through our lives. And so changing that can be really, really hard to do, but not impossible. And so I do want to right now work with some of our own limiting beliefs and fears that may be coming up for you. So I want you to go ahead and take a moment on your piece of paper, just write down any of the limiting beliefs that may be coming up for you. And if you're not sure, again, you can use some examples I have here. Yeah, it's the I'm not enough. I'm not a good enough writer. I'm scared to put my work out there. No one will like it. I'll only get bad reviews. So this is a fear of failure. I'll never finish the book. And even when I do, no one will want to read it. Maybe some of these are resonating with you. So just take a moment, write down any limiting beliefs that you feel like may have been coming up in regards to your writing lately. So as you have that list, and again, please pause this video if you need some more time, I want you to look at that list and see if there's one that feels most vibrant right now. So like maybe that, oh my God, I'm not a good enough writer is like sitting heavy on your heart right now. Maybe it's something that you were just thinking before watching this video or this week. Just go ahead and circle the one that feels the most charged for you, the one that you are like, oh, this needs a little attention. So we're going to take that limiting belief and we're going to kind of answer some questions around that to see if we can't soften its edges and soften just that charged, kind of vibrant feeling it has with us right now. And so in looking at the one that you circled, do you think this is sometimes true or always true? A common answer is sometimes true, but either one of these could be true for you. And so the next question is, can you think of an example of when this is not true, either for yourself or someone else? If at any point in time you feel like you can't picture this for yourself or it's not coming through in the context of you, you can picture someone else who looks similar to you, or it could just be someone else that you know of or you admire. You can also put them into this place. So can you think of an example of when this is not true for either yourself or someone else? The next question is, what is the belief that is opposite to your current belief? So if you believe that you are not a good enough writer, the opposite is you're a brilliant writer. Go ahead and take a moment and just write the opposite of your current belief. And the fifth question is, what could you say to yourself the next time this old belief comes up? So is there maybe an affirmation or an intention that comes to mind that you could say to yourself when that old belief comes up? And so in thinking about the statement you just wrote to yourself, kind of how could you remind yourself of this new belief that we were trying to onboard? We're not necessarily trying to just shift from like 100 to 0 or from 0 to 100. It does take time for these kind of things to onboard, and you can't necessarily just swap out words and it's going to fix everything. But I do think being able to consciously say, hey, this is a belief that's coming up. I want to interrupt it and think about this can help to tune and train our brains to be like, oh, we're trying to go in this direction now, instead of the old belief. So how can you remind yourself of this new belief? Or it could be intention, could be an affirmation, whatever feels right for you there. But go ahead and write that down and how you might remind yourself this. And again, it could be the post-it next to the one you wrote from the last activity. It could just be right next to that. So again, great work. I know this is a lot of self-reflection and you're doing an amazing job. And I know this won't necessarily fix everything right here, right now, but it is the first step in being able to address and nurture ourselves. So I just want to congratulate you and honor you for continuing to move through this and answering these questions and really showing up for yourself and your creativity and the words that you are wanting to write and that impact they'll have on the world. So I do just want to take a moment and invite you to have some self-compassion, especially if anything very challenging just came up. We can put our hands on our hearts, which does release oxytocin. So if that feels right for you, go ahead and do that. Really having compassion along our journey really allows some of that resistance to soften and allows us to open and expand into those possibilities of what we truly want for ourselves. So maybe just breathe into that a little bit and just, again, acknowledge yourself for being here and sitting with some of the tough stuff. I know it can feel comfortable, make us wiggle in our seats a little bit. But again, there's so much that we can learn when we turn into it and sit with it and, yes, allow that resistance to soften. Okay, so what we have covered so far is we've talked about our writing goals. We've gotten to the source of our motivation behind those goals. We've discussed the unconscious mind, and we've started to address some of the limiting beliefs that might be getting in our way. So, it's a lot. And so now I want to talk about how we're going to move towards our goals and getting them done. And so this is moving into the writing practice and time management portion of today's agenda. And I do want to talk a little bit about writing practices because I definitely see a lot of people talking about the 5 ways to create a writing practice, or there's all these different ways to create a writing practice. And I find that writing practices are so personal. And not only are they personal, but it changes on a day-to-day basis. I know for myself, I used to think a writing practice was just like sitting down and writing. Yes, and I have also found that like a lot of my time spent researching, especially researching the place or the setting of where my novel takes place. There's a lot of research that's going into that. And so that is not necessarily writing forward in my manuscript, but it is a really important part to elevating and creating such a world that people will be immersed in that feels very tactile. So research can also be a part of the writing process. Sometimes going for a walk and just allowing your brain to observe the world around you, that might be part of your writing practice. It could be sitting at a bench and just taking notes or drawing and sketching what you're seeing, getting a sense for what does it smell like, what does it feel like, what does it taste like. That can be part of your writing practice. I also know for me, I have a lot of my great ideas, especially around dialogue in the shower. I don't know. I know that sometimes when we aren't forcing ourselves to sit down at the computer and type, when we are able to step away, our brains kind of start to search and find solutions for us, which is really freaking cool. And so I find like when I'm doing something mundane, like washing the dishes or in the shower, I write some really great dialogue. And so I have allowed that to be a part of my writing practice. And so to the point where I've actually got those washable markers that I put in my shower because, well, I write great dialogue in the shower. And so I will sometimes write it on the wall, on one of the dry walls, and I'll come back and once I'm ready for the day, I'll come back and actually write it into my computer. So I share all of that to first say if anyone ever sees my shower, I'm not a crazy person. It's just I write really good dialogue in the shower. But also just to illustrate that our writing practices are very unique to ourselves and they might look the same 80% of the time, but 20% of the time, maybe it's more fluid and you are on a walk or in a cafe, like changing your environment where you're writing. And again, it could be that research or just absorbing the world around you. So don't feel like your writing practice has to be the exact same thing every single time you sit down or the exact time of day. Again, this is very personal to you and what works for you on each and every day. And so we're going to do our last kind of journaling exercise for today. So a couple more questions for us to really hone in on how we're going to nurture and move towards our goals. And so I really want you to think about, what is your writing practice like right now? So we are going to answer some questions. It may change this or not, but I want you to think about your writing practice right now. What does that look like? How is that working for you? And so the second question is, how much time would you like to spend on writing? So what would you like your writing schedule to be? Maybe it's different than what it is right now, or maybe it's the same as what you just wrote down. But spend a little bit of time of like, how much time would you like to spend on writing? So the third question is, what changes, if any, would you like to make when it comes to your writing practice? So maybe your ideal writing practice isn't fully in place right now. Or maybe you want to experiment a little bit. Like maybe you do want to change up your environment, go to a coffee shop once a week, or go to a writing group once a week. Maybe it's a virtual or in-person writing group. Maybe it's even taking a writing class. There's so many options out there. So what, if anything, would you like to change about your writing practice? So this is really thinking about, what is that big picture? Like, what could your writing practice look like if it was in its full fruition? And again, if you are experiencing right now, you're experiencing your full writing practice, that's amazing. This is also a great opportunity just to tune in and see, like, are you still on track? Does this still work for you? Sometimes we can get stuck in habits of doing things like we set our writing practice up a year ago, but maybe it's not serving us in the way it did a year ago. So this is also a great time just to temperature check how well it's still working for you. So the next question is, what time blocks can you create and how frequently? So this is really diving into seeing like what's really realistic for you. I know for me, sometimes I'm like, I'm going to write every day. And I'm like, that's not actually realistic based on some of my developmental edit projects and coaching. So I have certain blocks of days. There's certain days where I have more flexibility than others. And so as you were thinking about these time blocks you want to create, think about how realistic they are to commit to. And then also, if you feel like your schedule is very big, full, kind of where can you find the time? Like, where are there areas maybe that could be adjusted? I know we all have things that we are fully committed to that we can't move, but also thinking about where you might be able to find some of that time. And I will share too, I think for me, when it comes to time blocking, a few months ago, I have 3 time blocks on my calendar, all in the morning, that I have blocked to write. And I have found that seasonally, that has to change. I think in the summer, it's really easy for me to get up and feel motivated and start writing. And I've noticed in the winter, it's really hard for me to do that. And I've been shifting my writing more into the evenings. And so I think it's also interesting when we can really honor kind of the seasons of our lives, but also the actual seasons. We are a part of nature. And so having some of that flexibility as you're also thinking about what's realistic and what you can commit to. Because I definitely found myself in the middle of winter being like, I have to get up, I need to write, I do the things. And it was just becoming like such a chore. And so when I was kind of sat back and was like, wait, what's happening? And I have a writing group that I run. And so when I was like, oh, I'm showing up in my writing group in the evening and it feels so much more flow and more natural. And I was like, oh, maybe I just need to shift these into the evening right now. And that worked so much better for me, and the writing's flowing a lot more. So again, I share that because not just because we commit to something today doesn't mean that it has to be rigid and you have to continue to do it that way for the rest of eternity. We can adjust and be flexible. Okay, so the next question is, how do you want to celebrate showing up to each of these writing sessions? And again, this is about showing up for each writing session. This is not necessarily when you finish the book. You could do a celebration once a week or maybe once a month if that feels right for you too. But I want you to commit to how you're going to celebrate you showing up for these sessions. Again, this could be a fancy coffee in a coffee shop. It could be buying flowers. Could be having a nice dinner or a bottle of wine or a spa massage or facial. Like, the world's your oyster. It could just be going for a walk, whatever feels like something that you can reward yourself with celebrating. Maybe taking a bath, lighting a candle. How can you celebrate showing up to each of your writing sessions? Okay, how's that feeling? Truly amazing work. Thank you for sitting with all of these journal questions today. There's definitely a lot of self-reflection, but we've done such amazing work in really getting clear on our goals, our why, and how we're going to do that. So I applaud you and honor you for engaging in all of that. And so thinking about our next steps. So based on everything that we've discussed today, from our goals, the time management, addressing our limiting beliefs, having self-compassion, what are some action steps you're willing to take? So looking at everything we talked about, journaled, what's maybe just one step that you can take after you wrap up watching this video? So again, it could be, putting your reminders out. Could be calendaring your sessions. Could be celebrating your writing session. Whatever feels right here. What's that one action step you're going to take? And then I also want to know, how are you going to hold yourself accountable? So maybe it's writing that one action step down in the comments below, and we can all collectively help each other, hold each other accountable. So think about how you want to hold yourself accountable. Again, this could be calling a friend. You can tell me in the comments. I'll hold you accountable all day long. So I also want to talk about just, how once the subconscious mind sees the positive change starting to shift and occur repeatedly, even in these small little steps, that is when we get to start to see that change and really kind of create the space for that success that we desire. So you've got this. I know big things don't happen without challenges, but when we can continue to take these small steps and celebrate them along the way, we can achieve so much. And so I know at the top of this video, we talked about our motivation on a scale of 1 to 10. And so I'd be curious to revisit that now, given everything we've talked about. Has that shifted for you at all? What do you feel like has shifted or changed? And again, you can let me know in the comments if that feels right for you. Maybe if you were at 10 in the beginning, maybe you're at 20 now. And again, if you had self-doubt in the beginning, kind of check back in with that scale. Where has that changed on that 1 to 10? And so to begin to wrap things up here, I know this has been a lot of content, but I also hope that it's been really impactful and helpful for you. Because I really believe the world does need your story. And so it can literally impact the readers and how they approach their life. And when we have clarity and a connection to our true motivation, this is what's going to move us forward towards those goals and accomplishing our writing goals and having that sense of accomplishment of, I wrote the damn book. And, also acknowledging that there are going to be those challenges along the way. And so when we are able to address our limiting beliefs and fears, we can really support our unconscious mind to help create and sustain that change over time. And of course, creating a writing practice that works for you is so important, because that's how you're going to then execute on your goals. And again, this can be very fluid or as rigid as you need it to be, and flexible when it needs to be as well. So you're doing an amazing job. You're doing so great. I would love to hear kind of what were some of your key takeaways from today. Was there anything that was new or surprising, or you learned about yourself? Please let me know in the comments. I would love to know. And of course, if you have questions, you can also drop those in the comments. That'd be great. I will be responding to everybody. To connect further, of course, you can join me on Instagram at Charlotte Fulfilled Writes. I'm also on TikTok at Author Charlotte. And on my website, Her Narrative, you can learn more about a lot of resources. So on the blog, I write a lot about resources, tips, tools. Also learn more about editing services, coaching. And then I also do have a special invite for you, which I'm so excited about. The Page Turner workshop is starting. This is a very small group and intimate program, and this is combining both some of the introspective exercises that we've done today, but going deeper on those things, especially around the self-doubt side of things, and integrating a lot of the craft of fiction. And so this is going to be a 6-week journey of a small group of like-minded writers, really working on yourself as becoming that writer you want to be and wearing that author hat and elevating our fictional knowledge so that we can become even better at the craft that we're writing, so that we can impact our readers and really fulfill that lifelong dream of being an author. And so there will be no deathbed regrets around here. So if this is something that you feel called to do, I do have an early bird special right now, which you can get the link below. We do start on February 15th, and I would love to have you there. This is going to be such an amazing time to really up-level our novels and to go deeper into character development, point of view, dialogue, how to show, not tell. We'll have dedicated time to write, and then there will be actually live coaching. So we will work on shifting our mindset and saying goodbye to self-doubt. And then a lot of accountability around our goals too. So there will be accountability to really make sure that we're moving towards our writing goals with greater ease and joy, because this should be a very joyful process. So if you feel called, want to learn more about that, you can reach out. If you want to jump on a call about it, I also have a link to schedule that there at hernarrative.com/program-offer. Also, the link is below. So again, thank you so much for being here. Questions, drop them below. Happy to answer those, and would love to connect with you further. If you'd be on social or the program or any other ways. I cannot wait to read the words you write, and I just so appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.